Before everybody is left, let me first give you some notes for next year, and then I will try to do a very, very brief concluding remark. So, one thing I would like to remind you that for the last time we had a survey, if you can please fill it. And also let us know if you've been inspired, outraged, or would otherwise like to comment on the topics we've been discussing at this conference, because ProMarket is open to continue this conversation online after the end of the conference. As you know, putting these events together is no small feat, and I would like to take a moment to thank everyone who contributed to this event, including the Knight Foundation, speaking of contribution, and founders, who contributed to the conference, and in particular then our team, including the videographer Gabriel and the other AV techs, who have been live streaming and recording these two events. Our Stigler research professionals, CU, Emanuele, Shashank, and Lorenzo. Then Brittany, Utsav, and Joy for promoting the conference across social media and our platform. The ProMarket editorial team, Brooke, Madavi, and Andy, for their coverage and live tweeting. Our administrative team, including Annie, Rachel, Matthew, and Sebastian, for the planning and execution of this conference. And last but not least, Guy and Filippo. I also would like you to mark your calendar, because the next year conference will be on Thursday, April 16, and Friday, April 17. We'll follow up with a formal save the date and with more details, so we're not decided yet what the topic would be. But let me tell you what I'm conclude of two very intense days, and I really appreciate for everybody who had participated, because in his introductory remarks, Guy said that we should not indulge in self-congratulation for the changes that have taken place since the first conference was launched in 2017. And I have to say, this is a little bit hard, because there is a lot to congratulate us on. When we had our first conference in 2017, the theme of the conference was, does the US have a concentration problem? And I remember at the time, many of my colleagues ridiculed me because I was looking at concentration. This was the approach that the old structured content performance paradigm was using, and this paradigm had been defeated decades ago with the general contribution, as Bill reminded us, of the most dominant player in the industry. The dominant view in antitrust was that concentration was not a problem per se, only market power was. However, to prove market power, you needed a lot of data and a lot of sophisticated techniques. Too bad that the data were controlled by industry and the experts were mainly captured by industry, so it was impossible even to prove that there was a problem. Andrew Ferguson yesterday and Roger Alford today showed us how much the world has changed. Ferguson said very explicitly that concentration alone represents smoke, and whenever there is smoke, I quote him, you should take a look. How far from a Supreme Court decision, the Tamlis decision, where obvious indicia of collusion between two duopolies were not considered sufficient to further any discovery. In the paper with Eric Posen and Filippo, the one I mentioned earlier, we read the confirmation speeches of all the FTC chairmen and the DOJ Assistant Attorney General in the last 60 years. We never found a statement so aggressive as the one Roger Alford attributed to the new AAG. Antitrust should serve the purpose of helping American workers. Not only this, but the new Attorney General for Antitrust days later, in a memo that circulated to the staff last week, said the DOJ will review what it spends on expensive economic consultants. So, yet, Guy is, in spite of all this, we have to say that Guy is right that we should not be complacent. We should not be complacent because while the rhetoric has changed, the actual legal victories are limited. Most importantly, there is a risk in the global embracing of a more Brandesian view of antitrust. The great advantage of the Chicago approach to antitrust is that it restricted political discretion in prosecution. It was restricting it so much that almost no prosecution was taking place. However, now the risk is the opposite, especially in a world where the unitary view of the executive prevails, as we learned yesterday at dinner. The risk of political use of antitrust is high, and we should keep our guard up. In fact, antitrust could be potentially used to prosecute political enemies. As Tom reminded us yesterday, in the countries where democratic backsliding was contained, it was contained by experts. And so, as antitrust experts, we have a role to play. But to play that role, we have to have people's trust. As John told us at lunch today, this trust is lacking. In a world where experts have lost their privileged access, where the public is in revolt, to use Martin's book title, and where the COVID crisis has shown the abuse of expertise, how can we perform our role without people's trust? So, what do I think we should do? The first one is open the door of the ivory tower, descend from our cathedra, and engage without arrogance in the intellectual debate. This is what we have tried to do as Stigler for the last 9 years, having people from all persuasion and have a discussion, sometimes intense, but always very productive, at least in my view. As Michel said, we need to make antitrust interesting and exciting. I'm so sad that Marianne thinks it's not exciting. I think it has not followed too many of our conferences. Hopefully, after this, we'll find it more exciting. I think that Lina Khan and Jonathan Cantor have done a lot in this direction. However, we can do more. The second step is to actually regain the trust of people by being very open about the conflict of interest, about the limitation imposed by the data, and about the professional norms that make us behave very differently inside the ivory tower and outside. This is what we have started doing, and we promote this aggressively in the near future. But the third step, the one that is probably most important, and we've failed to do so, is to create a new foundation for antitrust based on liberty and not consumer welfare. Only a theory defeats another theory. I believe this is liberty was the inspiration behind the Sherman Act. This was the inspiration behind the Clayton Act. And this is the reason why antitrust is not boring but vital. I ask all the participants and the people online to join me in the effort in the years to come. Thank you.